Brighter news, Ken Flo, I guess, unless you're just a curmudgeon. UFC 204, Bisping versus Henderson 2. I did not expect this thing to go the championship 25-minute distance. It did. I know it's hard to talk about the fight without immediately segueing towards the scoring, but at least the fight itself had a little bit of everything.
What a fight, dude. I mean, unfreaking believable for Dan Henderson to do what he did out there and just to go 5 rounds with someone like Michael Bisping, who's fighting the best he's ever had in his career, was extremely impressive, man. Dan Henderson almost got it done in round 1. Just a crazy finish to that round. Wasn't able to really follow up with heavy ground and pound after he knocked him down. You know, there was a couple forearms or elbows that he landed, but just wasn't able to put Michael out. But, for Michael to battle back and get it together and go right back to a solid game plan and outpoint Dan Henderson the way he did was just unreal. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the fight, talking about, that Dan probably won and all that stuff. But I have my thoughts on the scoring. We could talk about that. But, man, as far as the fight itself, an absolute classic.
What else can you say about Dan Henderson at 46 years old? I mean, say what you want about the output at times as he sort of caught his breath and took some clock there in the middle of the fight, but just remarkable that he could fight an elite championship level middleweight at 46 years old over 25 minutes. I can't relate to that. Dana White, as he said, like, dude, I'm trying to get on the treadmill every morning. This guy's fighting an elite athlete in Michael Bisping and a cardio machine at age 46 years old. So all respect to Hendo and certainly for Bisping to respond to the early adversity. I thought round 2 was key for Michael Bisping, and it's a round that a lot of people gave to Dan Henderson. Again, I have no problem with that scorecard. My issue, I don't have a problem with scoring being open to interpretation and people ending up on different sides of it.
Yeah.
I have a problem when I see words like robbery and when people don't respect a difference of opinion, because the scoring system at present allows for that. So I guess we'll go to the scoring now. I guess off the top, Kenny, I would say when the stakes are the highest, right, main event or championship, that is more often than not when we find ourselves having these conversations. Not in 15-minute fights, but over 25 minutes when the swing is a championship belt and a massive win purse. And I think that's what's frustrating for people, right, is when the stakes are the highest.
Yes.
The decisions end up being the closest. Cruz, Dillashaw, Lawler, Condit, and of course now we have this one.
Yeah, people were freaking out even about the fact that the score was 4-1 and one judge had it 4 rounds for Bisping, 1 round for Dan Henderson. And it's actually not a very a bad call. When I look at the scoring, obviously, the first round was close up until the point where Henderson clocked Bisping with a gigantic right hand that dropped him. So for me, that wasn't a 10-8 round for Hendo. That was a 10-9 round for Hendo. Round 2, Bisping outstruck him, I think, leading in. Oh, actually, it was the whole round. I think they had it 42-11. So Bisping landed 42 strikes to 11 strikes for Hendo. And actually, the ones that I actually counted that actually landed was 1 shot, and it was the 1 shot that dropped Bisping at the end of round 2. And then he wasn't able, again, to follow up with quality ground and pound. So for me, I still gave that round to Bisping. I don't think you can drop a guy with 1 shot, land 1 really good shot at the end of a round and get outstruck and back up the majority of the round and win that round. I just don't think it should happen. I mean, he landed 1 shot. It was like 30 seconds ago and didn't really follow up with anything. And then round 3 Bisping, round 4 Bisping, and round 5 I gave the edge to Bisping as well. So it could have been it could have been 4 rounds to 1 for Bisping. So it wasn't an absurd call. And for Michael, everyone's saying, look at his face. All that damage was done in round 1. The majority of it was done in round 1. There was another follow-up shot, of course, with the right hand in round 2. But that's the kind of power that Hendo has. He throws those shots and he freaking damages opponents.
So some people obviously gave the second round to Dan Henderson.
Yep.
I don't have a huge problem with it, but Kenny, the way you and I seem to score fights, right, is we're certainly judging on the totality of that round, maybe more so than a knockdown. Whereas somebody like Dan Hardy had a 10-8 for Hendo in round 1, a 10-9 for Hendo in round 2, 3-4 for Bisping. and then round 5 for Hendo. So he had a 48-46 card for Dan Henderson. I thought you could make an argument that Bisping won rounds 2 through 5 to varying degrees. And I know that obviously resulted in a lot of criticism coming my way on Twitter, and that's fine. I watched the fight the morning after. So without spoilers, I went and watched it without the benefit of anybody else's scorecard. I was watching it in my own world. And I just thought in some close rounds, 5th included, that Bisping did just enough. And I can see 49-46 for him. I can see a scorecard for Hendo. But I thought, Bisping did more, deserved to win the fight, and deserved to have his hand raised.
I agree. And I don't think you can do a 10-8 round in round 1. I think that's a little much for sure. And listen, we all get excited and think about the possibilities of Dan Henderson at 46 years old being a champion. This guy is one of the most liked fighters in history. So it's very easy to get excited and to cheer for Dan Henderson. And again, all these knockdowns were happening in round 1 and 2 at the end of the round. So of course, that's what you're thinking of. But when you actually go and watch the fight and count the amount of punches that actually land clean that Henderson throws. Watch it. Look at the difference of who's backing up, who's moving forward, who's dictating the fight. And I think not being drunk, all those things, watch it and then score the fight and let me know what you call.
All right. I was sober. I watched it in a field in Coachella, and I scored a 47-47. I had it a draw, Kenny. My question for you on your round 2 scorecard, did you have it going for Bisping before you saw that stat, that punch stat?
Of course he did.
Yeah, I didn't see the stats until the 5th round.
Okay. I absolutely hate that they show the stats, especially in the building where the judges can see them on the monitors. But with all of that in mind, round 1 was a 10-8 round. Absolutely was a 10-8 round.
Why?
Because he nearly finished him, where Bisping didn't come close to.
But did he? He dropped him, and Michael was in his guard, fully in his guard, with his arms blocking punches.
Yeah, I think there was a point where if it wasn't a championship fight, it could have been stopped, and a lot of people wouldn't have complained about it. But with that in mind, it's a championship fight. He was allowed to fight out of it. We're all better for it. And anyone that says, "Oh, look at his face," damage is not a criteria in the unified rules, so get over it. I can't stand when people say, "Oh, well, look at him." Clearly,
But
clearly,
TJ,
Henderson
what I said, but what I can't stand is when people make absolute statements like you just did, right? See, my whole thing, I'm okay with the 10-8 in round 1. And objectively speaking, if round 1 is a 10-9 for Hendo, then round 5, I should probably at least have be a 10-10.
Well, let me
My problem is when people say, no, this is a 10-8 like you just did, as if, you wrote the fucking rules.
Let me say that I'm very adamant about that being a 10-8 round in my personal judging. It doesn't mean that it has to be in yours. So I will open the door for it to be up to, subjectivity. But for me, I think 10-8 should be liberally used. I think at the highest level, they need to be liberally used. And maybe that is one where I'm being too liberal, but at least on my scorecard, you give that a 10-8.
Ken Flo, one argument that I just sort of alluded to is if round 1 is not a 10-8, right, and it's a 10-9 for Hendo, round 5 was pretty close, right? I had a hard time scoring it, so I should probably be more liberal and throw down a 10-10 there and maybe even a 10-8 in round 1. I mean, I'm looking for someone to tell me that, all right, he nearly finished him in round 1. He knocked him down, so that supersedes the previous 4 minutes, and you got to score that round for Hendo. Okay, then I'll score the round for Hendo. But based upon my interpretation of the rules, I have 10-9 Hendo in round 1 and 10-9 Bisping in round 2.
And there's a reason why none of the judges scored it a 10-8 in the round 1.
Because they're uninformed and don't know how to do a 10-8?
No, there's a reason why. That you can't fucking knock a guy down at the end of round 1 after you're losing the round, and that can all of a sudden turn into a 10-8. It just can't happen.
So
it happen that way.
But so if you basically,
it's like you're kicking my ass on the feet,
Uh-huh.
and I get one submission, and I almost submitted. You almost finished the fight. Do I deserve a 10-8?
if the bell saves me, absolutely. If it's clear that if there's 10 more seconds left in the fight, yes.
Bisping got back to his feet. Bisping was able to get back to his feet after that. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
The horn has nothing to do with it, TJ.
The horn absolutely has everything to do with it.
Why?
If the horn saves you, you basically are continuing the fight due to a formality.
No, you can play
you can't
towards the
assume
horn,
that. How
bro.
many times? Again, we would have said the same thing about Czech Congo.
Okay, then how about this? If the
Against
horn,
Seth
if
Perry.
the
You would
horn
have said, oh, when
sounds,
Bell was in, he was out.
if
And
the
then
horn sounds when you are in a submission, I think you should have to fight out of the submission then. Otherwise, it's not a 10-8. You're saved by the bell.
I mean, I don't know. I think that is like looking at it in a very singular way. That's my opinion, because we've seen it time and time again. Guys get hurt, they get back to their feet, and they're fine. I mean, he got rocked with big shots, but Bisping was intelligently defending himself. He wasn't flailing like Forrest was against Rashad. He was in a guard. He actually got back to his guard and was defending with his arms. And you look at the shots that Henderson landed after he knocked him down. Go back and watch the fight. Let me know what shots really landed clean on Bisping.
You know, I'm also the guy that suggests 10-8s when one person has a bunch of offense that doesn't include strikes and the other person is fully defensive all the time, a la Damian Maia, has your back for 4.5 minutes. You don't do anything other than defense. I think that's a 10-8. Most people think you have to be bludgeoned and nearly dying, but I don't know. I think the 10-8 should be there when it's needed and not rare. Ultra rare, I believe, is something that Big John McCarthy has said in the past.
I think you said something that's key, and it's for 4.5 minutes. This guy's 4.5 minutes. He's on your back, whereas one shot, one knockdown at the very end of the round of a round that you were losing is going to equal a 10-8. I don't know, son.
All right, we'll agree to disagree.
All right.
So in terms
but
of
I respect
the
your
stats,
I respect your hair.
So in terms of the stats, it's interesting because when I call fights in North America, I have stats. And when I call fights outside of North America, which is the majority of the shows, for better or for worse, I don't have the benefit of the stats. And it's hard not to look to your left and lean on them a little bit, especially when you know that graphically they're going to be enhancing the broadcast and they're going to be asking us to talk to them, right? So I don't think it should be necessarily something that the judges see, and I don't think it's something that always tells the full story. So TJ, I am with you on the stats thing. As far as this fight and Bisping's revenge, Kenny, I mean, say what you want about the way he looked with his eyes shut. I mean, he went into the fight as a one-eyed fighter, so let's give him some credit for that. I mean, imagine Bisping with two eyes right now. But I'm not sure this gives him the closure or the revenge that he's looking for. A controversial, granted it was unanimous and not split, but a controversial decision win over a 46-year-old Dan Henderson, whum other guys like Gegard Mousasi and others have dusted in minutes. I'm just not sure that, as satisfying as it was in Manchester and everything else, I'm not sure that this was the type of revenge that Bisping was looking for.
Okay, now this is a different conversation, and I think you're right. You know, when you go out there and you get, knocked out, one of the most devastating knockouts in history, yes, ideally it would be great if you were able to get revenge by knocking out that guy. Bisping certainly wasn't able to do that. It was a close fight, and did he actually get revenge? I don't know. Did he get the win? Yes. So as far as, equaling revenge on Dan Henderson, yeah, I agree. He fell short of that. But he did retain his belt, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And certain days, man, you have your good days and you have your bad days out there. And anyone who gets hit by a punch from Dan Henderson could go down. Anyone as heavy as heavyweight. So the fact that Bisping was able to come back like he did was very impressive. I think he did retain his belt. I thought he did win. But as you said, I'm not sure he got revenge.
His reaction when the decision was announced was very similar to his reaction with the Anderson-Silva fight, that the outcome certainly hung in the balance, and Bisping able to get it done. We shouldn't take anything away from him. And as far as my scorecard is concerned, one last thing I will say, in trying to be more liberal with 10-8s and 10-10s going forward, even if you want to spin my 10-9 Hendo to a 10-8 in round one, I still had Bisping rounds 2 through 5, unfortunately for many of you, so I still had Michael Bisping winning the fight.